Yay! I think I did it. This is a bit of a test, y'all. First time I'm going through Be Live. And I'm going to tug the blanket down there because it's bugging me. Okay. Wonderbar. So I'm Sarah Michael. I'm excited to be here. And I'm finding the camera, figuring this out. I think we're broadcasting, so I'm going to begin. I suspect the topic I'm talking about today will be part one of more. And it looks like the light is a little bright, but we're not going to worry about it. It's fine. Yeah, there'll be more on this topic because this is a really large space of your marketing and your sales. And it's also a large discussion around where does the masculine show up in a sales conversation and where does the feminine show up in a sales conversation. It's a really good example of what I talk about along the lines of learning to dance between masculine and feminine energies really deftly, really agilely, if that's a word. I don't know if I pronounced it right. And with being able to switch back and forth at a moment's notice, just do it, back and forth. Developing that's taken me years, but it's something we can all strive for, where we are very self-aware, very aware of the other person or the situation, and able to choose in the moment, ask ourselves, what is called for now? Is it feminine leadership, where we're coming from love, compassion, patience, space? Is it masculine leadership, where we're coming from a place of getting her done and results and making sure it gets handled? We need both, and the ability to switch back and forth nimbly, back, left foot, left foot, is really a wonderful skill. And the sales conversation illustrates that dance really well. So before I launch into how the masculine and feminine show up in the sales conversation, first, want to define a little bit what we're talking about in terms of both masculine and feminine, and then the sales conversation. So we're all on the same page as we meld them together. So when I speak of masculine and feminine leadership and masculine and feminine powers, I'm really speaking about masculine powers and strengths of that push energy. It's very much an energetic. It's not male, female. If your brain has already decided I mean that, that's not what I mean. It's not male, female, so much as it's the energetic cocktail within us all, where we are made up of masculine and feminine energies. Whether you're a man or a woman, we all have a hormonal cocktail, an energetic cocktail of masculine and feminine. So the masculine are those strengths of making sure things get handled, deadline-oriented things. Anytime we're trying to produce something on a time frame, deadlines. Anytime we have an accountability and we must produce, we must get results. That's a very masculine form of power. And to do so, there can be that push energy I mentioned. It can be about kind of moving people out of our way and cutting through the noise. Again, all good things, but which are we going to lead with? Because I can feel some of y'all already being like, oh, I don't want to be like that. But sometimes we have to go into our masculine and make sure it gets done. We can't live in a state of, I'll describe now, the feminine is that love, compassion, patience, serenity, space, as I said, space, just holding space, allowing space for others, letting it be okay, whatever shows up, being responsible for the experience, not just the results. That's where the feminine and the masculine, I think, really marry. So the masculine's in charge of the results, the feminine's in charge of the experience. So when we can understand the difference there, I think it makes it easier to step into, okay, am I worried about the experience now? Am I worried about how my team is feeling and how they're doing health-wise, mentally, emotionally, all that stuff? Or is right now what's needed most for me to talk about deadlines, to talk about project structures, to get a status update? So that's where they kind of marry. So that's that piece. And certainly, it's funny being on Be Live. It doesn't feel live. You know how I pull in and out, but it doesn't feel like I'm live. And probably because I'm not on Facebook, I'm on Be Live. Oh, Heather Lynn is on. Okay, so I got a comment. Okay, so there is interaction. I'm like, well, maybe no one's here, which happens. Facebook Live happens when it happens. Okay, cool. So that was my first interaction. So that was cool. So maybe it does feel like I'm live. Well timed, Heather. I was just saying it doesn't feel like I'm live. And then you popped in. So that's the piece about masculine and feminine and the sales conversation. So when I talk about the sales conversation, it is really the consultative sales conversation model where you're asking a lot of questions, you're exploring what people need, what they're desiring, and their pain, like what's not working. So you look at the pain and their needs and their challenges and their struggles, and then you look at vision and goals and intentions and desires in that regard. I think I said desires twice, but that's okay. Where we're what do they want? So the possibility, I separate that into the pain and the possibility in the most broadest terms. And I know some folks are like, oh, we don't want to do the pain and we're afraid of the pain upsetting people, or I don't want to be negative. There's lots of stuff around the pain. And I would ask just for this moment to let go of that stuff. I'm really just talking about urgent needs, what they urgently know they need and are paying money for. That's the key, guys. You know how I like to unpack stuff so you understand why. We talk about the pain, and that's become kind of an easy buzzword for that whole section of the sales conversation, because what we're trying to get at is the thing that they know they have, their top of mind problem that they're willing to spend money for. That's why when we usually, if it's pain, it's urgent enough and they're willing offer. No. But if it's a match and you can help them with what they need, then you should make an offer. So how I deconstruct the sales conversation, because there's lots of folks out there that, have scripts and all this stuff around, and it's all good stuff because it gets you somewhere, and the sales is about mastery and learning what you can and moving on and to the next piece, and the next level is really what's key. So what I find is missing from the scripts is a real conceptual understanding of why the different parts of the sales conversation, discovery call, strategy session, whatever you want to call it, why different parts work. Again, back to, I want you to understand conceptually why stuff works. So how I coach the sales conversation is, sorry, my hair's all over the place. It's newly washed and quite floofy. Is I deconstruct the sales conversation. So in order to help y'all understand it. So the first part, like the very first 5 minutes or so, that's about connection and greeting. So hello, how are you, etc. The second part is about that pain, the urgent needs, the struggles, the challenges, what they are knowing that they need in that moment. A third part is the possibility. So what are their desires, goals, intentions, where do they want to be in 6 months, where do they want to be in 2 years, etc. And then the fourth part is your offer. Your offer. And that is a really important part. And I find, like, I'll do a whole Facebook Live if y'all want it on offers, because you got to make a powerful offer at the end of that conversation. Just saying, like, hey, it's, $1,000 for 5 hours isn't a powerful offer. That's a price quote. That's all that is. That's not an offer. An offer looks like a plan. Actually, I've had people compliment me on my plan, and I'm like, that was my offer. But it is. A good offer should be a plan, because your potential client should understand exactly how you're going, well, maybe not exactly how, but they're going to understand the lay of the land to get the result they're desiring. You have to paint that picture It's where I often talk about sales and marketing being leadership. It's where you got to lead because they're looking to you to lead. Show me how to do this. I'm paying you money to do this, so show me. Yeah. Okay. So that's the sales conversation. We talked about masculine and feminine and what that looks like. So the first part, that greeting and connection part of the sales conversation, is definitely more feminine because it is about, hello, how are you? Oh, forgot to turn my phone off. Hello, how are you? Yada, yada, yada. And that's obviously really a connected space. It's more of the feminine space. There is a little space to kind of see where we go with this in the conversation. And before I go on, though, I want to say, I want to wrap this entire conversation in somewhat of what I call a masculine structure, because you have the questions you're going to ask, and those questions, those deliberate, intentional, I call them often intentional questions, because you are exploring, which is more feminine, but the intentional questions are masculine. So the intentional questions are a masculine structure that supports your ability to then get into the conversation and then allow yourself to flow with it, allow yourself to be guided and ask the right question, allow yourself to hear something in what they said and say, hey, why don't you tell me about this? So that overall masculine structure supports the flow of the conversation. Now, so that first part, definitely more feminine than anything else. The pain, urgent needs, struggles, challenges part, it's pretty masculine. You're going to be asking some direct, intentional questions. You're also really wanting to sniff around in that area for what do they really need, and try to get it all on the plate. Like, I've had so many conversations, and I do a really good job of it, but so many sales conversations where, we get all the way through and there's like, oh yeah, and then there's this piece. And I'm like, why are we just talking about this now? But I think it's partly just how our brains work, and it just didn't spill out until that point. We want to do our best to ask those deliberate, intentional questions and look at it from different angles, like come at it from different angles too. That's one way we can sniff out what else is there. And also, this is where this is an especially masculine part of the sales conversation. As much as we're exploring and there's some space for you to flow with your questions, is you're not going to let them off the hook. Like, if they're all, oh, well, nothing's wrong, or everything's great, or everything's rosy, it's your job to dig deeper. And, well, you signed up for this call, or you said this before, so tell me about that. Did I misunderstand? That can happen. And not let them off the hook. This is where you're there in service to help them get what they want and need. And you're letting them off the hook when they say, oh, it's okay. It's your job to dig deeper into that okay. Well, okay is not great, and tell me what you'd really like. And that's where we need to be nimble, is being able to bounce back and forth with some of this. So that's a pretty masculine area of it, although there's definitely room for flow and more of the feminine space too. Now, the possibility and their goals and their dreams and their vision and their desires, that's a bit more spacious. It's a bit more feminine. We're talking long range. We're talking big vision. That's inherently a more feminine space to be than tell me what's not working, right? And we're still asking those deliberate, intentional questions, as well as not letting them off the hook. I find this stuff comes up. It's really interesting. People will avoid, because I do marketing, messaging, and sales coaching. I'm talking about money. I'm asking what they want to be making. I'm asking what they're currently making in the sales conversation. And it's so surprising to me how often people will tell me all sorts of stuff, all sorts of stuff, except the number. And I think it's very prevalent because we can have discomfort and ambivalence around the numbers and money. That's a whole other Facebook Live, but it comes out because there's something unresolved about just speaking plainly and bluntly about money and not making it bad to just even be talking about money. So more space, but still intentional, and you're still not going to let them off the hook. if they don't give you a number, or they don't really dig it, give you the vision of what, as a health coach, my screen just glitched again. I wonder if you guys are seeing that. That's interesting. Now the offer is probably the most, this is hard, probably the most feminine, because you're taking everything you've heard, everything they have told you, and if you've heard enough, because I'm assuming at this point you've heard enough that they do need what you have, and so you're going to make an offer, is you're taking everything well, it's good to know. Maybe this Be Live thing isn't so great after all. So yeah, I do this red flower to illustrate an offer. You said you needed a red flower. You want a red flower for your life. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you that red flower. And how we're going to do that is I have exercises, I have workbooks, we're going to talk through it. We're going to make sure you get that red flower in your life. Kind of a condensed version of, you said you need this, so I'm going to give you this, and then a little bit of the how. We want to focus on benefits in our offer and the solutions and the results. And we do need to go a little bit into the how, so they trust we know how to get them there. We don't want to make these big promises that we can totally fulfill, but without any detail of how that might happen, because they can't imagine this happening. That's why they're hiring us. So that weaving process of their language into your language, that's very feminine. And so most of the offer is very, very flowy. It's very feminine. It's spacious. You're holding space for them to just hear you. You're not necessarily trying to create a result. Although this is where, if you're too attached, again, we're going to probably do multiple Facebook Lives about this, because there's so many layers to it. But here's the thing, at the end of that offer, when you actually say, and it's all of that for just $3,000 or $500 or $10,000, when you say that, when you make that statement about all of that for just X amount of dollars, that's very masculine. That's like, boom, masculine is that ask. So, and then you want to promptly switch back into the feminine. The minute you finish saying it's all of that for just $3,000, you want to switch back into the feminine and just be quiet and just hold space and just wait for them to respond. You're leading up to it. You state the cost, the investment, and then you let go, release the pressure, and let them process. They'll talk. I know it might be hard to wait at first, but they'll talk. They will ultimately talk. I think I've let it go like 2 minutes before I've been like, did I lose you? But you want to give them time to process, to figure out how to make it work, which is usually what they're doing. If they're a yes, is running scenarios like, okay, I can do, I can pay this, whatever. And you don't want to interrupt that train of thought. You want to let them go through it. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear your comments. And Miss Heather, I'm sorry I kept glitching out, and all y'all, I'm sorry it's going to glitch out for you too. But this was a grand experiment, and it was really, really fun. It's the first time I've taught this via video. And definitely with clients, we talk about all this all the time, but it's kind of, this is the first time I'm condensing it into, a 20-minute lesson or whatnot. Well, thank y'all. Thank you, Miss Heather. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Let's see here. Bye.